Hello, my name is Ronnie Manning and I'm the Director of Public Relations at Yubico. We would like to thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Versasec, vSEC CMS plus YubiKeys, a new PIV smart card integration. Presenting today will be Chris Streaks, Solutions Engineer from Yubico, Will Lowry, VP Sales for Versasec, and Paul Foley, Versasec Co-Founder. The webinar will go approximately 30 minutes with a Q&A session to follow. To submit your questions, please use the questions form in the GoToWebinar menu on the right side of your screen. I'd like to thank you again for attending, and now I would like to pass it off to Will at Versasec.
Thanks a lot, Ronnie, and thank you all for joining this webinar today. So let me start with introducing our company. So we are Versasec. Former name was Versatile Security. We are an IT security software company, which means that we develop security software in the identity and access management world. And with a specific focus with managing digital identities, and especially in managing access-enabling security devices such as smart cards, mobile devices, virtual token, or RFID and NFC device. We are a Swedish company. Our headquarters is in Stockholm, but we do have our R&D center in Germany, professional service center in the UK. We have sales offices in the US, in New York and in Menlo Park, and in France also, where I am. We have a very good website, so do not hesitate to have a look. We just have refreshed it completely, and you have the capability to chat directly with us there. And do not hesitate also to follow us on social networks that we try to update regularly, and we have also a very nice blog now, so do not hesitate to follow this also. Could we go to the next slide, please? So before we go into the detail, I think it's very important when I speak about management of access-enabling security devices. It's very important to understand what are these enabling security devices. So we are speaking about PKI enabling devices, and the one we know the most is the one that you can see on the right here, which is a smart card in the credit card format that you can use for both physical access to the building, to the cafeteria, and so on, and what we call logical access, which is to access to your computer, log on to the domain, sign your email, encrypt your hard drive, authenticate to websites and documents, and so on. So that's one of the access enabling security devices. Another possibility is to use a USB token with a SIM card in it, or for example a virtual smart card using the Trusted Platform module, the TPM module, which is now available in all the PCs and tablets, and also a USB token with some embedded crypto chip, which is the case of the YubiKeys that we are very proud to support now in our system. So if we go to the next slide. So to give a good understanding, well, let's now speak about what is the main advantages of deploying secure PKI devices compared to other authentication mechanisms such as username and password or OTP, for example. Well, first, the main advantage that you have when you deploy secure PKI devices is that you mitigate the threat for sensitive accounts. Because you introduce two-factor authentication, cyber criminal won't be able to get access to your identity, because if they manage to steal your PIN, they won't get access to your token. And if they manage to steal your token, they won't get access to your PIN code. So by doing that, you clearly mitigate the threat for sensitive accounts and potentially for all accounts. And because you introduce this two-factor authentication, and because you don't need to use username and password anymore, and since you don't need to use username and password anymore, you don't have to manage all these password policies that when you need to change your password every 2 weeks with special characters and so on. So this significantly lowers the password maintenance cost, because you don't have all these help desk calls that you need to manage. That's very costly. And also, as a one of the results of this is that you increase convenience, because you don't need to have these password policies, and your user can have one token for everything. Because what is very important here is that with secure PKI devices, because PKI is the standard of the market today, which work for everything, email, document signatures, log on to the domain, log on to the website, log on to the VPN, Wi-Fi, and so on. You can use your token for anything without the password policy, so that's really convenient. And it's even more convenient with the Yubikey, because with the Yubikey you can use the PIV part, so the PKI part, for everything I have just said, but you can use also the FIDO part for your personal usage. So if you want to use for the personal usage authentication to Google or to Dashlane to manage your personal password, for example, you can do that, and with the same token you can use it for professional purpose using the PKI part, the PIV part. So that's clearly increasing the convenience drastically for the users. And last but not least, so the PKI device allows to secure access for remote users, because we all want to access anything from anywhere. So by introducing this two-factor authentication, and by the fact that it's supported by all the standards of the market, we can clearly allow all our remote users, all our nomad users, to access even the sensitive content without any risk to be exposed, whether this is with a corporate mobile device, or whether this is bring your own device. That's fine. We can definitely manage this thanks to this standard. And I think I will, that's my last slide. I think I will hand over to you. No, I have one slide more, sorry. So what does that mean when we speak about security device management? So I say that our main product is a secure device management system. And what does that mean when we speak about security device management? Well, security device management means that you need to make sure that your device is in the correct state and that the connected systems know about this state for the whole life cycle of the device. So let me take an example. So let's say I am a new employee of a company. So the first thing the company will do for me is that they will issue a token for me, and this will be done with the vSEC CMS. This vSEC CMS will register the token for me in the user directory. It will diversify the keys, it will enroll the certificate, and make sure that I can access to anything I should, and make sure that all the user systems are aware of this. Then I will be able to use my token on a day-to-day to log on to the domain, sign my email, encrypt my hard drive, authenticate to my Wi-Fi, and so on. But maybe at some point I will forget my PIN code. So I will need to find a way to unblock it, and thanks to the vSEC CMS, I will be able to do that, whether this is with the operators together, or whether this is over the phone using some change response mechanism, or whether this is using self-service capability. And also maybe at some point, maybe my credentials will expire, my certificates will expire, so I will need to renew them. And again, I will be able to do that either with the operator or using self-service capability. And maybe after a few years I will find a more attractive job, and so I will quit the company, and the human resources will need to be able to revoke all my credentials and make sure that I cannot access any of the company content anymore. So that's a good high-level and non-exhaustive summary of what we can manage in the CMS in terms of responsibilities of the secure device management. And now I can hand over to you, Chris.
All right, thank you very much, Will. So my name is Chris Streaks. I'm a solutions engineer here at Yubico, and I'll be kind of walking us through the overall mission statement of Yubico and explaining how the actual YubiKeys work themselves. So first things first, Yubico's mission. We were founded in 2007. We also have offices in Sweden. We have an office here in the Palo Alto area of the US, and we have some offices over in the UK. As of today, we've actually shipped millions of YubiKeys to over 150 companies, and 8 out of the top 10 internet or tech companies are currently using YubiKeys internally. And the ones that are using them are also in the process or are currently doing so, making support for end users. An example of that would be a company like Google, where you can actually utilize protocols like the U2F protocol for authentication with services like your Gmail account, things of that nature. And that's just extending more and more as we increase who we are selling to and increase who we are marketing our services to here. So our business model is also simple. We do sell not just online, so we also sell through the Amazon market, but we also sell directly to companies as well, enterprises, businesses that might be interested in implementing essentially multi-factor authentication in a very simple device through any method of services, whether that's an online service of some sort or smart cards, which is probably going to be the focus of today's conversation. Our mission is really simple. We're here to protect your identities, and we're here to make the internet a safer place to be. Next slide, if you please. All right, so before we start diving into the technical aspects of things, I would like to have a brief conversation on the authentication landscape as we see it today. So starting with the smart card on the upper left-hand side, and this is something that Will had us alluded to earlier, this is going to be the highest level of security that I'm going to discuss today. This is something that is actually in the shape of a card, and when I plug it into a smart card reader, this allows me to have an underlying public key infrastructure that allows me to authenticate users to a laptop or a desktop, etc. Now, the problem with the smart card, it kind of depends on your use case, but it is going to be something that requires me to have a smart card reader, some method of reading information off of the smart card. I can't just slap the smart card onto a keyboard and then say, all right, here's my authentication. I need a method of getting that data off of the smart card. So that process is going to involve a little bit of added complexity. So let's actually start talking about alternatives to the smart card. Your typical hardware OTP token. So that's the gray device that you see towards the middle of the screen there. So this is something where I plug it in, there'll be a series of numbers on the token itself. I take those numbers, I put them into the computer via the keyboard, and then I can authenticate off of a PIN of some sort. This is functional, and it's going to be less involved than a smart card in terms of external hardware. This is just using a USB port, but these are relatively bulky. These are things that are relatively expensive. This is going to require an additional layer of underlying authentication infrastructure to make this happen. And it's going to be vulnerable to things like phishing and man-in-the-middle attacks, things that I was not vulnerable to when we're talking about smart cards. And then the last thing that I'll really kind of focus on here is going to be software-based authentication apps, whether that's through a computer or a cell phone, which I'll capitalize on here. So there are plenty of cell phone-based authentication apps, and they all do a very good job. But the use case has to be considered where I'm not providing my end users with a company cell phone, or maybe my end user doesn't want to have customer or consumer grade software on their devices that will allow them to auth into their environment. And that's going to be a problem for me. That's going to introduce friction. So here and now we introduce the Yubikey, which is going to be up on the upper right-hand corner of our screen here. So this particular device is going to combine a lot of the benefits that we see of all of the other solutions here, things like OTP tokens and smart cards, into one simple device. I plug the device into a USB port, and when I want to do my authentication, I put in the PIN or I put in my username and password, and I touch the capacitive switch in order to release the secret to that computer. Let's actually take a closer look at this. Next slide, please. So there are effectively two major form factors that I'm going to reference here. One is the key-shaped Yubikey 4. Right? This is something that I would literally put on my keychain, and a smaller form factor called the Yubikey 4 Nano. The Nano being the smaller form factor that's effectively flush to the machine in question. So again, the way that it works, I put in my initial or single factor authentication, whether that's a password or a PIN, and then I touch the capacitive switch in the center to authenticate to that particular service. In the case of the Nano, instead of touching that circular disc that you see glowing on that first image, I just touch the side of my laptop or the side of my desktop. This is convenient, where now I don't have to worry about my end users losing their devices or something like that. These remain with the computer, and it's going to secure me from things like remote attacks. Somebody trying to get access to a computer, whereas they're trying to log in, but because they do not have that physical access, security is still maintained. Now, the last form factor that I will mention is the Yubikey Neo. This is effectively the same as the other two form factors that I've mentioned earlier, but the only difference is we've added NFC to this guy. So let's say I want to do all the same authentication that I've been mentioning, but perform that on an Android device. This will allow me to do that. I simply touch the key to the back of my Android, and now I can log into things like my Gmail account, or I can log into various other online services or a VPN of some sort without needing a USB port. Next slide, if you would. So when we talk about computer security, and especially when we're talking about a security device of some sort, we need to involve the conversation of how are these devices actually being processed. It's definitely a topic of conversation. How do I ensure that security is the tantamount feature of these particular devices? So let me talk about the manufacturing process a bit. So as you're reading from the slide, these are created both in the USA and in Sweden. When they are built, they are delivered as blanks to our logistics centers. If I'm purchasing them off of, let's say, an online store like Amazon, these are fully configurable to my specifications when I receive them using something called a Yubikey personalization tool. And if I'm an enterprise and I've purchased a lot of these particular keys, I can actually ask Yubico to customize them prior to them being delivered to my doorstep. Okay? So I can turn off certain things, I can enable certain things, modify what exactly the secrets look like, and we accomplish this in such a way that we do not hold on to any secrets in any form, and we do not desire to. Okay? That's a breach of your privacy. It's a breach of security. If there is a feature set that you wanted to configure, we actually have an entire solutions engineering department that will be more than happy to walk you through that process and deliver the particular security device that you are looking for, which actually is going to bring me to my next point. What exactly can I accomplish with a YubiKey? What are the various things that I can do here? So next slide, if you would, please. Okay. So we call this our butcher slide, if you will. Okay. This is kind of explaining the various things that I can accomplish with a single YubiKey. Today's conversation is going to primarily feature the smart card functionalities of the device, the PIV functionalities of the device. But that's not the only thing I can do with these. If I wanted to use this just as though I was using, let's say, an RSA token, for example, right? I have that functionality baked in. If I wanted to use the same token and log into my VPN device, using one-time passwords. I can do that. If I wanted to sign some code with a SSH cert or OpenPGP cert, etc., I can do that as well. And then finally, we have the ability to do things like the FIDO U2F protocol to log me into various online services. The major point here is that it's one device, and it has the ability to perform and act as an authenticator for multiple functions, all working together at the same exact time. One thing that the YubiKeys capitalize on is the fact that we are providing you hardware, but the back end is all open source. This means that as an enterprise or as someone who's looking to become a partner and work within the protocols that are supported by the YubiKeys, I have full access to reference libraries. I have full access to Yubico's GitHub code repository, and this allows us to be open in terms of how our security is presented to others, and to ensure that you are able to review any information that you need to ensure that we are upholding the level of security that I'm mentioning. It's not enough to just hear me talk about security without actually seeing it in action and being able to review it. That's a moot point. And we definitely make sure that that is fully available to anyone who is interested. Next slide, please. All right. So finally, we have come to the PIV part of the conversation. So PIV stands for, and we'll mention this, but Personal Identity Verification. It was actually developed as an open standard by a company called the National Institute of Standards and Technology. You may know them better as NIST. So the YubiKeys, in addition to being able to be used as all the various things that I mentioned on the last slide, OTP device, U2F device, can also be used at the same time as a NIST PIV standard smart card for authentication. Effectively what this means is that I can store whatever certs I want on this particular device. I don't need drivers if I'm on a Windows machine. And if I'm on something like Mac or Linux, it's simple to download the particular distributives for that particular integration point, say for Red Hat, for example, or CentOS. And if I'm talking about a Mac, there are additional DMG packages that I can install to enable those functionalities as they're not present natively. If we're talking about Windows, I don't need to do a single thing. This is baked right into the operating system itself. I can get to started working on this immediately. Next slide, please. All right. So again, just diving a little bit deeper into the technical aspects of the Yubikey PIV. The PIV functionality is fully supported based off of the publications that NIST has published, okay? Whether we're talking about the generation of keys or the importation of keys, or to generate certificate signing requests to request certificates from a given certificate authority in my environment. All of these functionalities are supported. We work perfectly fine with open source tools like PKCS11 or OpenSC, and then we also have our own custom PKCS package that will also support the expanded feature sets of the Yubikey. We also happen to have native support to our friends over at Versasec within their vSEC CMS product. Right. So again, you can utilize this for a number of different things, whether that's logging into RDP or storing certs for signing things, for logging into things, etc. And that's really where the power of this particular protocol comes from. And one last slide for me, if we'll go to the next, please. So this is a question that I get pretty frequently, and it involves, okay, what happens if I lose my YubiKey, right? You're mentioning that I can do all of this stuff, I can log into all of these different protocols, and I can auth into all of these different things. How do I recover from loss, whether we're talking about personal use or from an enterprise perspective? So I recommend that you keep multiple backup keys. This is the same exact situation that you would have if you were to lose your car keys. It's the same exact conversation that you would have. A lot of these different services, whether we're talking about logging into Google utilizing the U2F protocol or otherwise, support alternative backup solutions, whether that's having another key or utilizing something like a phone app like we talked about earlier, or SMS or backup codes. The recommended backup would be to just have a secondary YubiKey and to set it up as soon as possible. The best security is going to come with multi-factor security, typically speaking, with the physical form of multi-factor security, which is why I recommend, from a backup perspective, implement something that is a physical substitute for that particular device. Okay? So I believe that is the last bit that I have from Yubico's end, and I will pass the virtual microphone back on over to the vSEC team.
Okay, thanks a lot, Chris. So let's go into a little bit into the detail of the vSEC CMS then. Our company has been founded in 2007, and we have designed our vSEC CMS in 2009. And there were already some secure device management products in the market by then. And the reason why we have decided to invest in developing our own secure device management system back then was because what we saw back then is that when a company wanted to deploy secure devices such as smart card, it was clearly not easy. It was a complex task. And this was clearly something that not all sizes company could do. This was something that only big multinational and governments could afford. So from the start, we have designed a product with the advantages that you can see on the screen here, which is that with our product, the installation is very, very quick. If you stick to the standard requirement to implement some smart card logon, it takes minutes. It's fully integrated, and it's very, very quick. With our product also, we don't need any dedicated hardware. I'm talking about server. We can just use the existing server. In one of the versions of our product, we don't need any server at all. And we don't need an hardware security module, an HSM. If there is one, that's great. But we don't need one by design because we have our own HSM implementation that we store in operator cards, which give us the same level of security, but without the investment of the expensive hardware. So since the installation is very quick, since we don't need any dedicated hardware, and we still have the high levels of security, the consequence of this is that we guarantee the lowest total cost of ownership of the market for all sizes. Next slide, please. So what can we read into this mainly? Well, where the competition is today and has always been focused on large deployments, and that's understood. That's understandable. I mean, secure device management projects used to be large. Sorry. On our side, we have a product that scales up and which is as easy to deploy and to maintain for 50 users than for 500,000 users. So we do have a lot of flexibility. We can go to a customer and say, you know what, you can do step by step if you want. You can have a POC first with all the functionalities, or maybe you want to deploy the secure device for only your privileged users, like the IT administrators, for example. You don't want them to use username and password or to use an OTP key. You want them to use secure PKI devices, and with our product, it's very quick, very easy. It won't cost much. And once you're happy, you have seen it working for a few days, and you are 100% sure that it's fitting the requirement, you can just expand the licenses and deploy it for the full company. You don't have any risk on this. Next slide, please. So the product we focus on, because it's important to understand that vSEC CMS is a product suite of different products, and the product we focus on today is called vSEC CMS S-Series. This is our professional secure device management system that you install on a Windows server, so that's a client-server approach. You install that on a Windows server, and all the operators will access it remotely with their operator cards, either using remote desktop services or either using HTTPS for a SOAP interface. And same for the users. They will access it remotely for HTTPS using the SOAP interface. So it's really scales high. We support Microsoft clustering to ensure high availabilities, of course, and self-service capabilities, like I just have mentioned. Next slide, please. So if we want to summarize the key selling point of the CMS, the key selling point of CMS is that the implementation is really quick. As I said earlier, if you stick to the standard use cases, which is to do smart card logon and maybe authentication to website, VPN, and so on, into a Microsoft environment using the Microsoft PKI, it takes minutes. It's really quick. We have videos to show you that. It's fully integrated, no risk there. It's very, very quick. Of course, if you want to do added feature and to integrate with specific systems, then you have to do that separately, but that's still very easy because we have a very intuitive user interface to improve the operational efficiencies. One important point also is that we have an all-in-one approach. There is no hidden cost in our implementation. If you decide to buy our product, to buy our licenses, you get access to all the features with no limitation. You don't have to buy a specific add-on because you want to have a connector to something specific. No, that's an all-in-one approach. So that's the reason why we guarantee the lowest TCO. We are coming from a security background, so security is not an option for us. So we constantly ensure highest level securities on that. As I said earlier, large-scale capability. Our product is as easy to deploy and to maintain for 50 users and for 500,000 users, and you will get access to the same features. So that way we have a lot of scalability and flexibilities. It is fully integrated with the customer's ecosystem. I will come back to this in the next slide. And we are also very flexible in our approach. By default, the CMS workflows are fully customized, customizable. We have also a plugin API. If you want to customize the workflows yourself, you can develop an add-on to do that. And also, on our side, because we want to meet the customer requirement, we are also very open for customization as well to make sure that this is fitting the requirement. So if I wanted to summarize all these key selling points in one unique selling point, I would say that we lower the barrier to acquire strong authentication. We make it easier and cheaper to get real security system. That way, companies of all sizes can get the same kind of securities that was previously only available for government organization or large multinational enterprise. So that's how I will summarize a unique selling point. So if we go to the next slide, please. Here you can see all the connection. I say that our system is fully integrated into the customer ecosystem. We are not intrusive. We don't need to touch anything that you have. We just integrate with it. We don't require any changes. So we will integrate with your user directory, which this is LDAP or Active Directory, with your database server, SQL server, to mail server if you want to send some notification to the user because maybe the smart card is about to expire and the user needs to renew it, or maybe you have assigned a random PIN code to the token and you want to send notification to the user that will receive an email and say, hey, your token has been issued, you will receive it by internal mail, your PIN code is this, and you need to change it by doing that. Event log monitoring, the PKI, so that's the certificate authorities, that's the core of our approach of the PKI. So we do support all the main PKI provider of the market, Microsoft of course, but Symantec from our VeriSign, Verizon from our Unicert, GBCA from PrimeKey, Nexus, Global Sign, DigiCert, Entrust, yeah, I think the list goes on. HSM, as I said, by implementation, we don't require an HSM. We have the same level of, at least not for our master keys, if you, but if you have one already for maybe for your PKI mother keys, then that's great. We can use it also to store our master keys and secrets. Key archival and key recovery. If you want to use a secure device not only for strong authentication but also for confidentiality, for encryption, to encrypt your email and hard drive, then we need to keep an archive of the keys, and we do that securely with a key archival and recovery mechanism. We do encrypt the keys and we store them securely in our database to make sure that if you, for example, if you forget your token at home, or maybe if we lost it, then we are able to issue a temporary or replacement token with you, and you can still get access to your encrypted content with no downtime. Remote security device management for virtual smart card. If you want to implement virtual smart card, we have the capability to manage them centrally also, so that you don't have to go one by one towards the station, which is something which is quite interesting. The virtual smart card is also a good answer for fallback scenarios, like I just have mentioned. I am in travel and I broke my token. Well, if I have pre-provisioned a virtual smart card to you, then potentially I can just unlock it remotely over the phone, for example, and you can still get access to your content and you are not blocked. That's a key point for us. We want to introduce highest level of security, but we don't want to lower the convenience and the operational efficiency, of course. Smart cards, we do support all the main smart cards of the market and tokens, including the YubiKeys, of course. Self-service capability, I mentioned. Physical access system, if you want to use the tokens of the card for both physical access and logical access, we can connect to the system and make sure that both systems are in sync between each other. Photo captures, as for the badge approach, if you want to take a photo of the employee and printing it on the badge. And printer capability, again, for the badge approach, we have the capability to print graphically the layout on the card, and also, because this printer has some contact and contactless encoder, in the same process we can print the card, encode the contact part, so the certificates, keys, and so on, encode the contactless part, the RFID part, the physical access part, like MyFair Classic, MyFair Desfire, for example, in the same process, and we can do that in batch mode, so that you prepare an input file and then you just have to click execute and you can have a coffee, and when you're back from your coffee, all your cards are printed, encoded, and you just have to dispatch them to your users. Okay, next slide, please. All right, actually that's my last slide. So as I said earlier, our product has been designed in 2009 and we have started selling it in 2010, and we have been very successful since. We now have, and actually this number needs to be revised because it's going up every day, but we now have more than 200 active customers all over the world. Lots of different kind of customers. This could be financials, this could be retail, this could be government institutions, could be healthcare, every company which requires highest level of security. And since we have really simplified this, every company could be a customer of us. And we manage around 2,000, and actually a bit more than this now, 250,000 smart cards all over the world with our system. And having our customers satisfied is a strong priority for us. So, and I hope we manage to do that. So I think that's it on my side. So I will thank you all. And if you have any questions.
Yep. Thank you, Will. Thank you, Chris. So now we're in the Q&A portion of the webinar. If you would like to submit additional questions, you can on the question panel in the control panel on the side. We've had several that have come through, so I will ask the questions, and answers can come from Will or Chris. So the first question is, how many YubiKeys can be registered with Versasec vSEC CMS?
Well, that's for me, right? I will say there is no limit there. We have seen that with the vSEC CMS S series, you can use a product for 50 users and for 500,000. And I say 500,000, but I should not say that because we don't have any limit. As I said, we support Microsoft clustering to ensure all availabilities. So yes, there is no limit there. As soon as you put in place a number of servers which is in line with the requirement, there are enough number of tokens to manage, you're fine. So you can manage 10 YubiKeys if you want with a system, or you can manage 1 million YubiKey.
Great, thank you. Another question for Will. Do you have a plan for a cloud-based version of CMS?
Yeah, very good question. Very good question. Yeah, actually, yes, we are actively working on that. We have already introduced multi-tenant capability in the CMS, so that we are to be cloud ready, and we are working actively on having our own cloud version, so that especially for a small and medium deployment, they won't have to deploy anything, even if the deployment is easy already. They won't have to deploy anything. So that's something we have in our roadmap for this year.
Great, thank you. And for Chris, what operating systems do YubiKeys work on?
Oh, excuse me. Sure, my mute button's not working properly. There we go. So the operating systems that the YubiKeys are supported on officially are from Windows 7 up. Although there is support for Windows XP, it will require a driver that is not included in that version of the operating system. As far as the OS X platform is concerned, I believe it's Snow Leopard on. And as far as Linux is concerned, that really depends on the distribution in place. Other operating systems are supported, such as AIX servers as well.
Great, thank you. Back to Will. How is Versasec vSEC licensed?
Oh, good question also. It's a standard licensing model, which means that we have a license fee, a one-shot license fee, which is based on the number of cards or tokens that you want to manage in the system that are active in the system. If you revoke cards, you get your license back. So that's a one-shot fee that, of course, you can add more as soon as you want. And then we have a support and maintenance fee, which is a yearly fee and which gives you access to, of course, bug fixes, so service pack, and any new feature releases.
Thank you. Chris, is touching the YubiKey a biometric?
Not a biometric, and I apologize, I should have mentioned that during the conversation. So the capacitive switch on the YubiKeys themselves are exactly that. They're just capacitive switches, much like how your cell phone has a capacitive display that I touch and the electricity from my hand activates parts of the panel. There's no biometric included here. I will also mention this conversation. Biometrics are very much an interesting technology, but keep in mind that it is essentially assigning a static identity to your form of authentication. You can't readily change your fingerprints, which makes it a little bit tricky when we're talking about revoking certifications, for example. It's absolutely a viable option as far as multi-factor authentication is concerned, but I find it's a lot easier to derive a security device, like a YubiKey or a token, from an identity.
Great, thank you. And one more for you, Chris. How difficult is it to get the YubiKey Nano out of my USB?
That's a great question. So we've actually recently redesigned, ever so slightly, the YubiKey Nanos, where the molded form factor is actually a little bit easier to remove from a USB port. It was not impossible before. In fact, there's actually a small hole in the top of the YubiKey Nano where I could put a small thread or something and pull it out that way. But with the newer molded form factor, it's a little bit easier to put my fingernail under there and pull the key out. It is designed to stay in, but it is not hard to remove if it is necessary.
Great, thank you. And one final question is, what is Versasec's go-to-market strategy? Is it direct, resellers? How can people find out?
That's a good one also. I mean, we don't sell direct. We are using a network of distributors and resellers all over the world to help us to deliver this to our customers, to deliver the best quality to our customer and best support to our customers. So yeah, Yeah, we have coverage, of course, in EMEA, in Asia Pacific, and in North America.
Great. Thank you. So that's all of the questions, and we'd like to thank Versasec for participating in this joint webinar with Yubico. Again, thank you, and we will close out the webinar now. And we will be sending out a PDF version of the presentation and also a video recording as well, which will be on YouTube and Vimeo. Thank you.